Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Ben Lynham. I am Head of Strategic Communications at the Travel Foundation, and please could you all introduce yourselves in the chat. Welcome to this first in a series of 4 webinars that have been organised as part of the Transforming Tourism Value Chains project. And that's in collaboration with the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Programme and the World Tourism Organization, UNWTO. So the topic for our webinar today is nudging green behaviours. The other 3 webinars will cover climate action planning, and that webinar is already scheduled for Tuesday, the 4th of October, and we'll put some details into the chat. Then we will also cover off the circular economy and plastics, and also food systems in tourism. So first, I'm just going to give you a little bit more information about the Transforming Tourism Value Chains project. That is led by the UN Environment Programme and funded by the German government's International Climate Change Initiative. We at the Travel Foundation have been an implementation partner for the project, and we're really pleased to be hosting this webinar today. The project aims at reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving resource efficiency in key tourism sector value chains with high resource use, and it was focused on 4 countries: the Philippines, St. Lucia, Mauritius, and the Dominican Republic, all known as SIDS, or Small Island Developing States. Influencing the behaviour of staff and guests must be a key part of any plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as we found in the project, and to achieve broader sustainability goals in the tourism sector. So by nudging green behaviour, we today are talking about ways of influencing or reinforcing sustainable choices for both staff and customers, or should I say guests, for our focus today is on the accommodation sector. We have for you 3 speakers today, and I'm really looking forward to their presentations. Each will be around 10 minutes long, and then we will follow that with a Q&A. During the webinar, please share your own stories and insights on the chat at any time, and be sure to put your questions for the speakers in the Q&A section rather than the chat. That way we can make sure that we pick them out, and you can also upvote other people's questions too. My colleague Terry Brown, who was a project manager for this project, will be monitoring both the chat and the Q&A, and he'll be offering up your questions when we get to that part of the webinar. The webinar is being recorded, and the video will be circulated afterwards through a link. And so now I'd like to introduce our 3 speakers. Milena Nikolova is Chief Behaviour Officer at Behaviour Smart. She is an expert and researcher in behavioural economics in tourism, with a global professional network and experience gained across 4 continents. Carl Hunter is a property manager for Anse Chastanet, Hotel and Spa and Jade Mountain Resort in St. Lucia. Carl has over 28 years of experience managing the maintenance and development needs of Caribbean hotel and resort facilities. And we also welcome Susan Logan, Director of Sales and Marketing at Bucuti Tara Beach Resort in Aruba. She has been with the resort since opening day, over 34 years ago, on the executive team, and was proud to have attended COP26 last year to accept the Carbon Neutral Now Award. So I'd now like to invite Milena to share her screen and start our first presentation, which will really set the scene for this topic. Thank you. Over to you, Milena.
Thank you. Okay, my screen is on, correct?
Yeah, we can see.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ben, for the introduction, and of course for the opportunity to be part of this interesting series. What I want to start with is to talk briefly about the space in which my passion and my career have been growing in the last years, and that's how we can use knowledge about human behavior and human psychology in order to influence behavioral patterns of staff, customers, entrepreneurs in a way that advances the sustainability performance of our sector. What is the main idea here? The main idea is that if we apply knowledge about how human psychology works and how people really make decisions and engage in actions, we can be realistic about the solutions improving sustainability performance and harmonize them with the way that we really think, decide, and act. This ultimately makes sustainability solutions more effective and more efficient in terms of their fast adoption, but also the resources that we take in order to achieve the desired goals. Because understanding and keeping an eye on human behavior dynamics in the context of sustainability basically means minimizing the friction between what we know about human behavior and the principles which drive that and the sustainability goals that we have. I want to start first with a brief note on why sustainability actually is difficult from a psychological or behavioral point of view. One of the renowned names in behavioral economics is Dan Ariely, and I'm going to rephrase one of the quotes that he uses in the context of climate change and human behavior that I really find quite insightful. And basically, he says that if you pull together leading behavioral scientists and you ask them to design a problem that would be absolutely difficult for people to tackle, it would be sustainability or climate change. The nature of the problem makes it very difficult for us, especially in the context of leisure travel, to engage in. From a traveler perspective, when we are on holiday, we tend to focus on the now, on what matters in the current moment, on the joy that we extract from the travel experience. So in that sense, sustainability, even if it's something that's important to our value system, tends to be a nice to have add-on benefit of the experience, but it's not the core of why we're there and what motivates our decisions and actions. From a tourism worker perspective, focus, again, is on performance, on success, on career advancement. And in many, many cases, realistically and psychologically, sustainability actually comes as an extra responsibility or extra burden. And that is why simply educating, simply informing, simply signaling what is a more sustainable option or what is a more responsible choice is not enough and hasn't been an efficient way in getting both workers as well as clientele to engage with sustainability more effectively. So in that sense, taking this behavior smart approach and leaning on the principles of nudging and incentivizing, pushing slightly the sustainable choices is the right thing to do. Sustainability decisions are actually driven in many cases not by the ethical and moral values and commitments of people. In fact, both for travelers and for workers, in the majority of the cases, decisions which come out with sustainability or footprint outcome are made not based on careful or mindful engagement with what is better and what is right or wrong, but actually with what is the easy option, what is the default option. We also have to understand that in travel context, the very nature of leisure experiences puts us in a situation where we release controls, and these controls can relate to eating or being responsible in general, including to ourselves and to our own health, but it also means releasing controls on recycling or sustainability behavior. So even if at home we are quite disciplined and follow general principles of sustainability living, when we are on holiday, we would allow ourselves an extra dessert, and we would allow ourselves to be a little bit more lenient towards responsible consumption or responsible choices. Another thing that drives sustainability decisions in leisure travel context is the fact that for many people, for the majority of the travelers that we serve, sustainability is still overwhelming. It's a concept that feels in conflict with the very state of relaxation and enjoyment. And the nature of travel in natural ways places or actually disconnects the action of the traveler and the future outcomes of these actions. So these are just a few factors that we know from traveler psychology or human psychology that apply to the mechanics of sustainability decision-making, which also make us believe that simply educating is not sufficient to activate more proactive transformation towards sustainable choices. It is important to understand that when it comes to human decisions and human actions, they depend on two main sets of factors. The first group is associated with us as individuals. These are things such as previous experience, what is important to us, our value system, what is our current state of mind, and so on. So this is the first group of factors that determines whether and how we make certain choices. The second, more important one, relates to the context. Who we are accompanied with, what is the expected social norm around us in the place where we are about to make a decision or engage in an action? What do others around us seem to be doing or seem to be expressing preference for? These are all context-related factors, which sometimes have a major role in how we are going to approach sustainability. So in that sense, when we are thinking about nudging, we are thinking about how can we influence the design of the context so that we can increase the likelihood that the sustainable choice will be the more preferred choice. Now, what I'm talking about here is not unheard of. This is the approach that the automotive industry has been following when it comes to improving design of vehicles. You know that more contemporary cars include a number of design features in the interior and the technology that seek to eliminate options or elements which could lead to an irresponsible decision or a decision or a poor choice, which might be driven by lack of attention or by a human mistake. So in essence, we are seeing a decrease or extraction from the design of options which are associated with likely responsible choices. We also see an increasing number of situations where sustainable or responsible options are the default option. And we are also seeing that designs are increasingly improving to make the responsible, the right choice that you make as a driver, natural and easy. All of these are examples of nudge-based solutions that aim to change the design of the context in which we are consuming or which we are engaging the driving experience in a way that focuses on the effectiveness of getting us from one point to another point, on the quality of the experience of driving, while minimizing the undesired effects that might happen in this context. So the idea of adopting a nudge-based approach to the context of travel basically follows the same idea. Example one, What can we do to change context and to increase the likelihood that sustainable options are going to be the more preferred options? The first thing that comes natural is to change default options. The same way that you can see a significant difference in the rate of reuse of towels at an accommodation facility if you simply flip the default option of changing versus non-changing towels, can produce desired effects if it's applied to car rental services in countries where there's sufficient electrical infrastructure for electric vehicles. You could make the default option electric, so that everybody who's comfortable with driving an electric vehicle would simply go with the default option. And that alone, an action like that, can increase significantly the share of low carbon vehicles that are moving around the streets of a destination. Example 2. Incorporating signaling information that is presented to the traveler or worker at the moment of the decision. The decision is being made. The example that you see here comes from a Swedish startup that helps restaurants produce an estimate of the carbon footprint of their meals and presents them to the client in the menu, following a traffic light system where the client immediately sees whether the meal is green, yellow with average carbon footprint, or red with high carbon footprint. This signaling information coming exactly at the decision, the moment the decision is made, can change preferences by between 11 to 25%. And it's something really simple. Example 3, making sustainability part of the design. Automating or similar to the automotive examples, making the use of a reusable bottle automatically part of the experience. So you receive a bottle upon arrival at the property or upon the start of your hiking experience, which automatically eliminates the chance that you would be buying or using a single-use plastic bottle. Example 4, emphasizing appeal rather than presenting desired options as the sustainable, responsible, ethical choice. We could simply enhance the attractiveness of these options. So, for example, if a hotel wants to increase the share of guests that walk to places of interest rather than jump in a taxi, they could provide directions, walking directions, by highlighting specifically interesting things that they could see only if they're walking to the recommended restaurant or to the place of interest. And example 5, presenting a desired option as an accepted social norm, something as simple as leaving a reusable bag in the hotel room or the apartment, indicating that this is what you can use for shopping, automatically frames the use of reusable solutions as the norm of behavior on the property or in the respective community. Small things like that activate or modify the approach that the guest will take. So, of course, all of these were really, really simple illustrations of the type of nudges that we could use in order to adapt the design of the context and the experiences that we offer to guests and to the service design driven by our workers. And the premise here is that if we are realistic about how really human behavior works and understand and keep an eye on the psychological realism that tells us why simply providing information or educating travelers has not been very efficient, then we could make significant progress in increasing the likelihood that sustainability will be the preferred choice. And honestly, if we are serious about sustainability, that means that by taking these behavior smart, nudge-based techniques, we could make sustainability non-negotiable by automating and making it part of the design everywhere where that's possible, by making it the default option at the very least, and of course, by making it very easy as a choice. I hope that with this, I was able to set the context for some of the fantastic examples that the rest of the panelists will share.
Thank you, Milena. That was really interesting, and hopefully there were lots of real tangible examples of the different ways that you can go about nudging behaviour. And I think that there's a start here of an interesting debate about the extent to which you should be nudging versus just having some of these things by default. And certainly so many of the good examples that are out there are really the default option, or at least the the only design, design out the unsustainable options and only have the sustainable option in there. And so we're sort of trying to explore that area on the edge where we're doing that nudging, and there is choice, and we're pushing for some of those better choices to be made. The next part of the webinar now, we're going to move to the properties who have examples for us that we can really get a feel for how this can work in practice. And so I come now to Carl to share his screen. Thank you, Carl. And just a reminder, Carl is from Anse Chastanet in St. Lucia, and he's got some examples for us.
Okay, so thanks so much, Ben. And again, thank you very much for inviting me to present at this within this forum, and hopefully we'll have some great takeaways and have an active discussion. So let me just get my screen shared. Oh, there we go. Okay, so actually, I was fascinated just initially hearing Milena speak about the psychology behind influencing behaviors and achieving behavioral change, and making sure that it's kind of culturally segued into what works. And that's really what we focused on initially when we were trying to roll out our objectives. So our objective there was to try to get greater buy-in to power management, water management, the use of gas, essentially all of our energy utilities on property by our team members. And we were struggling with this. And we think when we look back at it, it was such an assumption that it was a collective responsibility that it ultimately became nobody's responsibility. And we had a lot of conversations, one-on-one chats, and tried to find out, what were the inhibitors for people coming forward and just naturally managing power. And we struggled with that a little bit. And then we really kind of sat back and we looked at this very old expression, culture eats strategy for breakfast, which is really true. And so we knew that we needed to link the desired behavior change to the existing culture. And I would say, the Caribbean is an amazing place to be conducting business. I've lived and worked here now for over 30 years. But there is somewhat of a rebellious nature towards actioning what you're told to do. And that's historically endemic throughout the Caribbean. It's not that people misbehave. It's not that people are inherently bad. But there's a resistance to being told what to do. So we knew that we wanted to link this behavioral change to something that people could personally identify with. So rather than trying to train or lay down a set of rules or produce a best practice guideline and simply train it, as Milena said, sustainability has to be more than simple training. So what we chose to do was really look at the whole energy picture within St. Lucia, make it very relevant to the context of living here, and educate our team members with the agenda on preparing them with information, tips, actionable items, so that they were super informed about how to use and manage the cost of utilities within their home environments. And we never alluded to within that training that there was any benefit for the company. There was no focus on the workplace within that training. And we knew that we were going to sacrifice time, but understood that this would be a primary mechanism to have established so that our team members could subsequently migrate that information to the workplace. And so initially we started looking at the regional cost of energy. All the figures on this screen are Eastern Caribbean dollars. So just to quickly translate that, St. Lucia currently has one of the highest energy costs within our region. We're at 46 US cents per kilowatt hour, which is colossal, 4 times the amount of power in Florida, for example. So we gave them an understanding of the cost of power within our region, and we demonstrated how other locations within our region have different power ratios and different costs associated with it. We then looked very carefully at general appliances, and we picked specific things that typically people would use. And so we spoke about the cost per hour of using appliances. So we spoke about a curling iron, using a kilowatt hour for every 8.5 hours of use. We spoke about a kettle consuming a kilowatt hour in 45 minutes, and we attributed the cost of that. We looked at fridges, televisions, etc. We took a deep dive into air conditioning because it's such a huge consumer of power. And we discussed using fans for air circulation and natural ventilation as alternatives, and the cost contrast in using natural ventilation versus air conditioning, which is hugely expensive to operate. We also looked at using electricity for water, which is fairly common in St. Lucia and totally disingenuous to the natural sun and the ability to thermally heat water. And we also introduced and made sure that people understood how to access loans, consumer loans, to install solar hot water in place of electricity, and also allowed our employees to understand that the government currently in St. Lucia gives 100% tax rebate on the purchase of a water heater. So essentially we wrap that up with a story that it's really free to have hot water, because the cost that you would have spent in paying for your water over a year is the same cost that you would spend for a solar hot water heater, and that's 100% refundable through your tax return. So essentially you need to make a decision: should I invest in solar hot water and have 15 years of the life cycle of the heater producing hot water at no energy cost, or do I commit to continuously paying the utility company for the energy that would otherwise have been saved? So a real deep dive into educating and presenting the opportunities within the home environment for our employees to engage in. We then looked very strongly at phantom power, and phantom power is all the things that we have within our home environment that nibble away at power in small ways, admittedly, but collectively this adds up to a lot of power consumption. So your television plugged in with that little glowing light on the bottom, just ready to be energized, is consuming power, along with your microwave, your pressure pump, if you have a pump for your home's water supply that occasionally cycles, all of the transformers. We're a 240 volt country, same as the British power setup, but a lot of the appliances we used are sourced from America. So everybody has these big converter transformers, and the transformers themselves are essentially small heaters within your environment, continuously consuming power, whether or not you have loads connected to them. And then on a much smaller scale, the power consumed by the little gadgets that charge our phone and aquariums and all these things within our home environment that we're not aware of are constantly consuming power, whether or not we have the benefit of it. And this, brought out a long discussion, and we were able to get a lot of dialogue going. So essentially, we gave the gift of knowledge, supported with tips and tricks to help our employees understand how they use utilities and also the cost choices of doing so. Along with that, we had a lot of tips on water savings, how to tell if you have a leak, going and reading your meter just before you go to bed at night, waking up in the morning, making sure you don't consume anything, flush a toilet, make a coffee, and checking your meter again to see if it's moved at all, indicating loss of water that you're not using within your environment. So we really drill down on all the different ways to understand your home environment and the power consequences. And then what we did, it was the most exciting part. We really nurtured this process. We waited for about 3 months, but not passively. We engaged individual team members in discussions, those who were very passionate within our presentations and came to us for additional information. We used them as kind of seed planters to disseminate their good stories and share that with other team members. And then we regrouped in similar format to how we did the initial training. And we started asking the questions, and the questions were how or what has worked for you. So we had a lot of individualized stories of success. We asked how they had saved money and consumption. And, how much money have you now managed to keep in your pocket? And we were getting great stories, especially as it related to the control of phantom power, which a lot of people were unaware of. We spoke about the recommendations for others based on their stories. We discussed whether it was hard or easy to do. And then we leveraged the kind of, not the trick, because a trick kind of seems like you're trying to trick somebody, but we leveraged how we were trying to switch this to the work environment. And we had a really lengthy discussion on whether the employees felt that they now had new habits at home that would help them save waste and keep dollars in their pocket. And this was the pivotal moment that we were leading towards, and that took a great deal of time, but we knew we had to allow that seed to grow, and that the good stories that surrounded the growth of this initiative were available to be shared as an encouragement and as an incentive for others to participate. So then we really did the big thing, which was just the basic kind of flipping the switch. We then simply asked to simply now do at work what you automatically do at home. So by providing that forum, by providing the training, the information, and supporting the good stories that came from that, we were able to flip the switch and suggest that there was nothing new to learn, just simple actions that were already inculcated, that had already become habitual within the home environment, to be transmitted into the work environment. And sure, that took a lot of nurturing as well. We put stickers everywhere for, turn off when not in use. And we made sure that we acknowledged good behavior whenever we saw somebody taking the right action. We would speak to it and praise it. And it became an active discussion within our morning briefings and our meetings. And the result was really tremendous. So the outcomes for us have been very measurable and so far sustainable. We did this about 3 years ago, and we're still enjoying the legacy of our efforts with significant reductions. So the primary thing that we're proud of is that we established a knowledge base that our employees can action at home and at work. We inculcated learned actions that are simple. And within our resorts, we have found that we have more focus on turning off, turning down, and using less. And this has resulted in 27% lower water consumption. That's a huge figure, but I have to say, along with that, quite a major water leak was discovered that had become habitually read as part of our daily consumption and accepted. And that was pointed out by a team member. We were in our dry season, and one area of our grounds was tremendously green and needed no supplementary watering. So this was an area we focused on and found our leak. But in addition to that, and this is simply through best practice from our employees, we've also been able to track a 15% overall reduction in electrical consumption and 7% less in our LPG consumption, which is used for our laundry and all of our cooking. So it's been a tremendous success for us. And again, coming back to Milena's key points, I was so excited to hear that, because it seemed we fortuitously, if anything, went in the right direction. We really focused on the human behavior and how to culturally link the changes that we were seeing and make it of direct benefit to our employees before we chose to flip the switch. I think this is a model that anybody can embrace. I'm very happy to share the original slideshow presentation that stimulated the initial discussions. And I think that if you try this and you make sure that you invest the time first, so that you don't come on it from, this is what we want you to do at work perspective, but empower the employees to be energy champions within their own environments. You have the potential for great success when you transfer this. So that's my presentation. I'm going to leave some times for question and answers, but I hope that that had some value.
Carl, thank you so much. That was so interesting. And I mean, I've been keeping an eye on the chat too, and everyone's agreeing, as they were also with Milena. And please keep the chat happening, and the questions that you have now, make sure that you're putting those into the Q&A, because we are going to get to those shortly. It does seem that I mean, you know, it really is interesting to think about the culture, not just the telling, and the fact that you were even kind of communicating that both from the estate and for their home behaviour too, you know, just to make sure that this was something that people really believed in. I think that was really interesting and inspiring. But now we go on to Susan, and Susan has another story to share, that from Bucuti and Tara Beach Resort. And thank you, Susan, over to you.
Thank you so much. Carl, that was a very inspiring example. I really enjoyed your presentation. And Milena, I enjoyed yours too, because it really applies to the approach that we've taken at our hotel as well, which is sort of a combination, I think, of inspiring behaviors and then implementing them so that they are automatic or kind of in place for people to follow as well. So we have 104-room resort in Aruba. We are thankful to have returned from COVID with the 97% year-round occupancy. And we were able to reach certified carbon neutral status in 2018 and have maintained that since. And we noticed that the first nudges back in the late 1980s after opening came from our guests, as a matter of fact. And we were really told by one of our guests, where we served a beer in a plastic cup, that this was absolutely unacceptable, and that we need to step up our game all the way back then for sustainability. And this woke us up a little bit. In addition to large growth in Aruba in tourism in the early 90s, where we started seeing tangible results with trash and with waste. And that was followed by the UN Earth Summit in 1994. That really was a wake up to us to understand more about climate change. And our owner, Iwo Bimans, was extremely passionate about taking action immediately, understanding what the future would hold if we didn't. And we started the process with Green Globe as a partner. They had implemented wonderful systems of management and systems of control, purchasing, that we were able to implement in our organization. And it really provided a great resource for training, vendors that we could use. And they were a wonderful partner to start with and gave us a great foundation in which to start. From there, we took on other partners over the years that would help us with specific things. For example, LEED Gold helped us with our structure, made sure that our buildings were green, and Travel Life helped us communicate this to our consumers, and which I believe is a nudging behavior in itself. Our approach with our employees was this structure that we had built. We made it our company culture. So as anyone is hired into our organization, they're trained into this culture of sustainability and all the processes and systems. And there's hundreds of them in each department that we implement every day. And therefore we have that as part in the training program. And they actually sign a commitment upon being hired that they're going to follow and abide by these principles. So some of the more practical things, in addition to the ongoing training on our program, is that we also give green loans so that our employees can benefit from EV bicycles, EV cars. We'll help them get solar panels for their homes. And we will also fund an energy audit so that we have partnered with a company in Aruba that will go in and help any of our employees understand how they can save energy and money through implementing new technologies in their home and equipment. When our managers are making schedules, they also help with carpooling for our employees, so they can schedule that as well. We find that group activities are very motivating, and every year we have a recycled art contest, for example, and this is something that really boosts morale. It gets everyone involved. We have the local media and guests attend. Guests are actually our judges on it. And it's just a fun thing that really, again, solidifies the culture and brings everyone into the program very nicely. I'm just going to move on here. I'm happy to share this with anybody with all the more details that we have. But as far as guest behaviors as a partner to this overall program in nudging behaviors, every television, when turned on in our rooms, loops a 6-minute detailed video about our sustainability program, because we find that a lot of our guests have chosen us for that beautiful beach behind me. It's uncrowded, it's natural. They're there for their honeymoon or their anniversary or their birthday, and they may not even know about our program. So this really helps them understand a deep dive into what we're doing. And we find the feedback is not only knowledge, but sort of a pride, that they've stayed in a property that is really preserving nature for future generations and for their future stay. We get a lot of great feedback about all that information that we provide them. We provide them online resources so that we can maintain our paperless situation. We gift a reusable water canteen in the room when everyone arrives. They receive this clearly as their gift that they can take home, but to refill in our water stations throughout the resort, so that we've been able to save 290,000 water bottles on an annual basis from the landfill. And we find whatever guests can participate in themselves is also very motivating. We get a lot of good feedback when they're able to participate in the program themselves. Of course, we have the waste bins in the room to divide trash, and we have healthy portions. We've reduced beef on the menu, and we've helped guests understand why we've reduced beef on the menu with a little explanation on our digital menu, which is on an iPad. So we also purchase locally, and we inform our guests of this as well. We have Aruba Aloe on the island. They produce our shampoos, conditioners, lotions locally from local Aruba Aloe. It's a wonderful tour, as a matter of fact, that we encourage them to go to see that in action. And so we don't have to ship in plastic bottles. We don't have to use plastic bottles. We bring in these tubs of product and we refill them, of course, in our dispensers. And that is $50,000 of savings. And it's also saving 91,000 single-use plastic bottles every year. We have electrical generating fitness equipment called Echo Power in our gym, and it actually delivers energy to the grid instead of having to plug it in and use energy. Guests are informed of this with a big screen in our fitness center. It's quite fun because it gives them practical examples of what their workout actually produced. So one guest might have lit up a city block for a week with their run that morning. We give every week a sustainability tour of the hotel so they can see the back end machinery, so to speak, and get up on the roof and see not only that beautiful view, but the spread of all of our solar panels, and they can understand more about how that works and what it produces. Our concierge team only offers planet-friendly excursions. So we recommend hiking in the park. We recommend anything that is not going to disturb the environment in any way. And we also use electric vehicles as much as we can and have an electric vehicle taxi that does station itself right outside of our front desk because we have set up a charging station for him. So it makes it very easy for him to serve our guests with electric vehicle. So we've created the first concierge that is the carbon offset concierge. So our goal is to offer carbon neutral vacations. And we've reduced, of course, our emissions to just a minute amount that we have to offset to be carbon neutral. In fact, we're very close to being carbon negative, so that's near to our future. But what we offer guests is for their travel, because everyone has to fly to Aruba, we're dependent on that, that we can help them offset that process so that they can have a carbon neutral stay. It's free, and the concierge pretty much directs them to a place where they can go and buy the offsets. So we just let them know how much they have to buy, depending on their travel to and from, both by taxi and air and on island travel. We have a green stay incentive. So if somebody wants a green stay, we will give them a small discount off their room. And what that means is they get a package of things that will change for them. For example, less housekeeping during the week, less change of towels, all of these things. And guests love to participate in that. And we find that, as I had mentioned before, when you can deliver an experience in a group, it's very motivating to everyone. So we have a monthly beach cleanup. We celebrate that on social media. Our associates attend, our guests attend, their friends and family can attend. And it's a beautiful morning. We make sure that we keep that beach clean from debris so that there is none that go into the ocean and disturb the wildlife there. We get great feedback about that. Let's Plant Aruba is a reforestation campaign that we send groups out, and we do reforestation projects with that group. Tortuga Aruba, each year we inform our guests. We have the leader of this organization come and train about how to protect the turtle during nesting season and hatching season. We've started a spay and neuter foundation in Aruba that's been very active lately, raising money to subsidize spay and neuter and homeless animals. The donkey sanctuary, we volunteer and we bring guests whenever they would like to come to help that organization. We have local arts and crafts every week at the hotel. For example, we have one vendor that sells lionfish jewelry made out of lionfish, which is, of course, an invasive species, and it helps the reefs. And we're very prolific in messaging about all we do. So we put it in our newsletters, we put it in our internal staff newsletters, we do blogs, we attach all this to social media. So we celebrate all of these things that we do. And I believe that's a nudging behavior for people to get excited about it and to want to participate. Some of the nudging behaviors in our restaurant, we did create a dedicated vegan lunch and dinner menu. And we have vegan choices, of course, at breakfast. And I love that there is a company that is helping restaurants determine what the carbon output is for certain dishes, because we found that to be very challenging. We're still working on that because we think that's a fantastic idea to let guests know what the better choices are on the menu in terms of climate. And so we're in process, but I think I may reach out to that company for some help. We do issue healthy portions, which means that we reduce the portions on our menu by 30%. This has been extremely impactful, and we weren't sure how it was going to be perceived by guests, but they actually really appreciate it. And we inform them that we do this in our social media, on our website, and on our menu. And it has actually been a very positive thing. Food waste is picked up by a pig farmer. And again, we talk about everything we do prolifically, again, to nudge behaviors and to get more buy-in from everybody. So what the results are of these things, we believe, are the adoption of these habits. So we're hoping that people have stayed in our resort and see all that we do, bring some of these best practices home. We have been able to win a lot of awards around our program, and it's given our staff a lot of pride in working with a resort that's so proactive in preserving the environment. Our community is appreciative also that we're preserving nature for future generations, and we do benefit from the publicity around it as well. So one thing I always like to bring into these presentations is that luxury and sustainability are not mutually inclusive. And what I mean is there's this myth out there that it costs too much to be sustainable as a hotel business and you can't get a return on your investment. And we are very happy to share everything that we do with any hotel. And we are proactive in doing so because that's not the truth. We are able to operate a very successful hotel and at the same time really be a leader in sustainability as well. So I always like to deliver that message because that's what I hear the most, is that it's not profitable. That's not true. And so I thank you today. It's been really wonderful to hear Milena and Carl. It's very inspiring for me, and I appreciate the time today to talk about our program.
Thank you so much, Susan. Another really inspiring people with lots and lots of creative ideas in there actually about how you've been able to engage staff and guests in reducing your carbon footprint and other footprints. So now we come to the Q&A session, and there have been lots of cues put in from the audience. Many of these have been kind of answered in line basically by our panelists, so thank you for that. I'll try and maybe pick out some of the themes from some of these anyway, because some of these I think are kind of duplicated in many questions. So I'll see if I can kind of ask a few that are covering off a few things. One question related to where do you think the drive is coming from here? Is it more from staff and management, or is it more from customers themselves looking for these experiences and this kind of response? And so that's an open question. Does anyone want to start us off? Susan?
I'll be happy to comment because, you know, I love Milena's presentation because she helped me realize that we're a little bit on the right track by actually incorporating a lot of the behavior change so that it's not necessarily a choice, you know, that everyone's benefiting from these things without sacrificing any quality of service or anything, and then educating them along the way, what we've done. So I think it's, for us, it's 50-50. We've incorporated all these things, but we try to educate and bring people along at the same time, if that answers the question.
Thanks, Susan. Melanie, if I give you a slightly different version of the same question, when do you find that that people are receptive, and when is there a type of customer, say, that is more likely to be receptive, and a type of customer that's more likely to be reluctant, do you think? Or is it all down to how it's done?
In terms of picking up sustainability nudges or responding?
Yeah, if we're trying to nudge, you mentioned in your presentation that sometimes people, you know, they want to have a good time and they're reluctant to do things that they perceive to be kind of good practice at home.
I I think we have to be realistic about the fact that while there is a segment of very responsible or sustainability oriented travelers, the majority still, even if they align with sustainability values, even if at home they're pretty disciplined, when they're on holiday, if they find it easy to skip on a principle, they will, and that's just the way that we operate when we are in holiday mode. So in that sense, everywhere where we can make it easier for people to engage with a sustainable choice or to pick the sustainability option, we really should, because that's what would be a proof for that we are mindful and we actually want to achieve optimize the footprint of our industry. There's always a small segment that would be irritated and that would probably have a negative attitude towards an attempt to influence their choices if they perceive it that way. But I feel that the majority will go along with the way because many want to be more responsible. And if it's made easy and if they're helped to be more responsible by the context and the design, then actually, as both Susan and Carl highlighted, that will produce higher satisfaction as well, and they will be more satisfied both with the experience and the satisfaction that they're giving back to the provider who's helping them be more responsible.
Thanks, Milena. I'll bring you in, Carl, and I'll just slightly twist the question. In terms of the different behaviours that you've tried to bring about within your staff and within customers, is there a particular area that you can highlight where, as Kathy Mack has said, that where guests really don't get it, they don't really understand why something is the way it is, or why they're being asked to do something, and perhaps we could extend that to your employees too. Is there an area where you did experience a bit of pushback and you could share that with us?
I'd love to say yes, but actually no. I think most of what we've done has been very strongly embraced. Historically, we've been very sustainable throughout our operations. The operation started here in 1974. And so our client base, and we have a huge amount of repeat guests, get it and choose us as a destination because of that, or have shared their positive experience with others who have chosen us as a destination. So I think we have actually potentially the reverse is we are now held accountable to our sustainable standards by the expectations of our guests. And I think that is a great thing. So we can't deviate from our integrity in the mission, because we're very highly visible. We celebrate what we do. We produce annual sustainability reports. And so dare we step away from that? Not at all. Besides, it's our core. So no, I'm really not finding that, which is great.
That is good. I mean, if there's no example like that to share, then that's fantastic. Right. Susan, again, sort of slightly different question, but on the same theme. People were asking about sort of the uptake of some of these things within your resort. So for instance, the green stay incentive, the carbon neutral donations. Can you give a bit of a sense as to that kind of gives us a feel again of how much demand there is for these kinds of initiatives?
Well, it's not huge, to be quite honest. We are growing this through messaging, letting people know that these services are available to them. The green stay, we do offer that in pre-arrival information, and that is picked up a lot. So I would say, a lot more, I should say. We would love to see everyone do a green stay. If I were to, I would estimate it as about 35 to 40% of people will choose a green stay. And we actually give a little placard that hangs from their door to let other people know that this guest has enjoyed a green stay. And they're seeing as they walk down the hallway those who have a green stay. And some of them are prompted at that moment to say, what is that? Can I do that? So they're informed prior to the stay. Some sign up, and some do it while they're actually guests. And that, I think that's the question.
Yeah, and that's great.
Yeah.
And that's a really great idea as well, isn't it, to present these initiatives and show how many other people who are staying are actually participating in that. I'm sure Milena would be telling us that there's a behavioural economic reason behind that, which is really interesting. I guess I had sort of one last question, really, because unfortunately time is precious, and we've come to the end. But it's a question around what more could be done for people like you, Susan, and Carl, from destination management perspective. So I think it's kind of interesting that some of what you guys are doing and trying to encourage from a behaviour perspective is kind of what's happening outside the resort. And to some extent, that's perhaps a good reason for focusing on nudges in those areas where you have less control of the choices that are being made. Is there anything that you would like to highlight? Maybe one thing each that you could say, actually, this needs to be the priority for destination managers who are looking to support accommodation managers. Carl first.
Thank you, Ben. We could all benefit from greater, let's say, destination branding. I think St. Lucia enjoys an international branding as being more or less an eco-destination. We have mixed brands within St. Lucia. I'd say one of our gaps to close, and where we could become more effective as a sector in presenting integral sustainability, I would like to use the word integral there importantly, is through greater collaboration. I think that we could have mass impact, particularly within purchasing, the amount of solid waste the industry generates, the collaboration, the greater collaboration as it relates to sharing ideas as to what has worked and been impactful. We've been tremendously successful, for example, through the collaboration that has evolved us out of pretty much all single-use plastics within the industry in St. Lucia. We've had a lot of support from the Ministry of Sustainability, who also led a styrofoam ban that occurred in 2019. So there is a general awareness within the destination. It could always be increased. I think our gap still remains to be the stepping back from the need to be proprietary and have unique ideas, and embrace the general ideas as being universal ideas that works for everybody, and then work on top of that to define your niche from what your property can offer to further enhance those generalized sustainable efforts. That would be my point.
I love that, Carl. So sustainability not as necessarily always as a competitive advantage, but more of a collaborative approach.
Very much.
Susan, do you have something to add to that? You have the last word.
We actually started the environmental committee for the private sector many years ago, in the early 90s, and partnered with our Aruba Tourism Authority, the government sector, in different projects, and support them, of course, and encourage them to have more sustainable and renewable energy sources, and just in general to understand over tourism, to the big picture of how we can all move forward sustainably. So it's an ongoing conversation. It's not always an easy one, because governments really are focused on growth, employment, that some of their priorities are a little bit different. But I think keeping that dialogue open, staying engaged, making sure you have these type of committees that, I know the government is always very happy to take our example and put it out there, not only for others in Aruba, but as what we're doing as an island. So we know that there's pride in that, and we hope that that encourages others, both in the region and on our island, to do more as well.
Thanks for that, Susan, and thanks to all our panelists and speakers, Milena, Carl, Susan, I think you really have been inspiring people, and the questions kept coming. I hope we managed to represent at least a good handful of them. So thank you all. Just two very quick points. One is that there's going to be a very simple feedback survey. Hopefully we're going to use all the right behaviour nudges to get you to respond to that survey, please. This is the first in our series of webinars, so if you've got any feedback, we can react to that for the remaining three. And on that note, the next webinar is on climate action. It's Tuesday, the 4th of October. I think we may have shared a link, and if not, please watch this space. We will be sharing information through our channels. Thank you all. Thanks very much. See you for the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.